The Conservative leader Kim Badenoch says she thinks the cap needs to stay and accuses Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage of being people pleasers. Also this lunchtime, Volodymyr Zelensky accuses the United States of silence after at least 12 people are killed in overnight Russian strikes on Ukraine. Minneapolis marks 5 years since the murder as the Trump administration rolled back police oversight. And a new study hopes to shine a light on what Welsh dolphins get up to beneath the waves. Good afternoon. Angela Rayner has refused to confirm if the government will scrap the two-child cap on benefits as it continues its mission to try to tackle child poverty. Speaking earlier to Sky News, the Deputy Prime Minister said Westminster is considering scrapping the cap, but such a move would not be a fix-all solution.
I absolutely believe that good, secure, well-paid jobs are the way out of poverty. I've seen it through my life, and I know that it gives people a sense of dignity. As a mum at 16, and everyone written me off and said, "Oh, she'll be on benefits all her life, and she won't be able to help herself. We'll have to help her." I wanted to provide for my son, and many families want that opportunity at the moment, but they find they've got too much month at the end of their wage check at the moment. That's why the employment rights at the end of their wage check at the moment. That's why the employment rights at the end of their wage check will help to reduce rents and will help to give people that home ownership that they desperately want to attain.
So you don't really agree with those Labour backbenchers who say lifting two-child cap would be a signal of true Labour, and by the way, would make sure that you're not outflanked to the left by Nigel Farage?
Well, look, it might be a signal, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to alleviate the levels of child poverty. There is a number of factors: people's wages not increasing, their employment being insecure, their cost of living crisis that we face, their bills going up, and their housing costs have gone up. So it's not one particular element that is going to
Elon doesn't believe
poverty we've seen after
I think Elon doesn't believe South Africa stands a chance. Do you really want to know? Because
for you to have a family and to do well in life.
But the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, pushed back this morning, saying she thinks the cap should remain in place.
It needs to stay. There was a reason why we brought it in, and it was brought in better economic times than we have now. But the fact is, our welfare bill continues to grow. We're spending over 100 billion on servicing debt interest every year. We're borrowing to pay welfare. The two-child benefit cap is reasonable. It's the right thing to do, and we want people to know that we manage the economy properly. That's what a government should be doing. I don't think it is right to scrap it.
Well, this government says it's considering scrapping it. Mr. Farage is actually clear he wants to scrap it. Are you sure you want to be the outlier here?
No, I'm going to tell the truth and be the person.
America, I will never be intimidated by Donald Trump. They were speaking about me in that meeting at White House. If they were not gossiping about me, they should have called me into that meeting. I would have
to have your children. But we do have a humane system where we look after people, but the cap is at 2 children. I think that is right. That is fair. Nigel Farage and Keir Starmer.
Hello, I'm George Breeze, Div 1 Prop, and this is everything I eat in the build-up to a game. Yeah! First at 5:30, I have a cup of tea, toast, bacon and eggs, and this is me eating bacon and eggs. And then I'll pack my lunch for the day, involving protein shake, all these snacks you can see, into my lovely little lunch bag. Smoker, I have some sausages, some fruit, and another cup of tea.
I think that hasn't gone down
A chocolate Tim Tam. Lunchtime, mince and tays, more tea, some more fruit, and another chocolate Tim Tam. Before the gym, I have some tuna and some creamed rice. And then for supper, I made carbonara, which is a common pre-game ritual. I had 2 bowls of this. This is me eating carbonara, watching Family Guy. And then I have some yogurt before bed. Pre-game, first breakfast is porridge, protein porridge.
There is a perception that perhaps there is movement on other things, and we know that there is a desire from some in the Labour Party for the two-child benefit cap to be scrapped and supported under the Conservatives remains in place. We know that 7 Labour MPs were previously suspended, some since reinstated over a vote on that. And as I said, I do know that there are Labour MPs, even if they're not publicly speaking about it, would like to see that, and I think that is the case in government as well, that they would like to ultimately to see that cap being removed. It is something, you heard Angela Rayner there, that the government say that ideally they would love to do, but of course everything costs money. It would be £2.5 billion. It would, however, take about 300,000 people, children, out of poverty. So Labour treading a difficult line with this, unclear what is going to happen, but you saw there Kemi Badenoch making very clear that Tory party policy would be to keep the cap. What is very interesting is that we are seeing clear water now between UK, Nigel Farage's party, and Kemi Badenoch, because we're expecting in a speech next week that he is going to say he would scrap the
another really good live at bat here. First pitch, two-seamer, gets by him right there.
Nigel Farage clearly parking his tank on Labour law, trying to appeal to working class Labour voters. He says he wants to be Prime Minister. He knows that to do that, he needs to get votes, not just from the Conservative, but the Labour Party as well. We saw that they can eat into the Labour vote in the local elections, in the Runcorn and Helmsby by-election. They came second in 98 out of 80. Sorry, in 98 seats they came second. In 89 of those seats, Reform came second to the Labour Party. So I think that is what we are going to see from Nigel Farage next week, an attempt to show that he will remove that two-child benefit cap, something very symbolic for the Labour Party.
Thanks, Ali. Breaking news now, the hugely prominent BBC figure, former executive and arts presenter Alan Yentl, has died at the age of 78. He joined the BBC as a trainee back in 1968 and went on to be controller of BBC Two, revitalising the channel, commissioning the likes of Absolutely Fabulous and Have I Got News For You. He also launched CBBC and CBeebies and commissioned the likes of Middlemarch and Pride and Prejudice, which cemented actor Colin Firth's status as a heartthrob. Latterly, he also presented the BBC Arts documentary series Imagine, which began back in 2003. His wife, Philippa Walker, has said, "For Jacob, Bella and I, every day with Alan held the promise of something unexpected. Our life was exciting, he was exciting." And the BBC's Director General Tim Davie has said that Alan Yentl
New Short Whole Body Deodorant. All day odor protection. Sure, it won't let you down.
To Ukraine now, and a barrage of more than 360 drones and missiles has killed at least 12 people in the country overnight, the largest single attack by Russia since the war broke out, according to Ukraine's Air Force. In the wake of the attack, the President Volodymyr Zelensky called for more international pressure to be put on Russia. He said on social media, "The world may go on a weekend break, but the war continues regardless of weekends and weekdays. This cannot be ignored." He continued, "Silence of America, silence of others around the world only encourage Putin. Without truly strong pressure on the Russian leadership, this brutality cannot be stopped. Sanctions will certainly help." Ukrainian officials say 4 people died in the Kyiv region, another 16 were injured in the barrage of drone strikes and missiles. In another city to the west of Kyiv, 3 children were killed as well, and in the west of the country, another 4 people died too. In the south of Ukraine, 1 man was killed in Mykolaiv after a 5-story residential building was hit by a drone strike. Well, just hours after the sustained attack, Russia and Ukraine swapped another 303 prisoners on the 3rd and final day of the exchange agreement that was reached in Istanbul a couple of weeks ago. That brings the total number of prisoners released by each side to 1,000. Back here, the renationalisation of Britain's railways has begun today, with South Western Railway coming under public ownership. It is one of 10 rail operators set to be nationalised over the next 2 years. Sky's Alice Porter has more details.
This was a part of Labour's manifesto that they were going to begin this process of renationalising the railways. So that has begun today with South Western Railway. That's now being brought under the control of the Department for Transport Operator. Now, if anyone is watching this and hoping this means that their rail fares will go down in price, unfortunately, I think you're going to be disappointed, because so far Labour have not committed to promising lower fares for rail passengers. What they have promised, though, is they promised to invest more in services, and what they've said they're going to do is invest the profits back into the rail network's infrastructure. And now Heidi Alexander was on one of the first services out of London Waterloo on this new renationalised service of South Western Railway, and she says it is a new dawn when it comes to the rail network in the UK.
As we transition the train operating companies into public ownership, starting this weekend with South Western, we're going to require really high standards of those regional operators around punctuality, reducing the level of cancellations, improving the passenger experience. And the truth is, we've inherited broken railways, and this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fix that, and I'm determined not to waste that opportunity.
In terms of the schedule for renationalising the railway network, it is important to stress that 4 train operators were brought under public ownership under the Conservatives. But in terms of this year, we've got 2 more rail companies will be brought under public ownership, and they are CTC and Greater Anglia. And then there will be another 7 companies brought under public ownership by 2027, depending on whether the contract ends or depending on the service that they're providing. But the government is certainly hoping that all passenger rail services will be brought under the government's control by 2030.
That's Alice Porter. 5 years ago today, George Floyd was murdered by police officers in the US, sparking a huge response around the world. Back in Minneapolis, where it happened, several events are being planned across the city today. There are also protests at what many see as a rollback there in oversight of the police by the Trump administration. Hollywood's Jimmy Maruke reports.
Day of joy, celebration, and unity. 5 years on from a moment that exposed so many of America's deepest divides, they came together to rebuild George Floyd. First, a call to action.
And what we want you to know is that we have not forgotten.
Before they gathered, and they sang. These events part of a festival called Rise and Remember, organized to mark the anniversary of a killing that evoked outrage. The murder of George Floyd, captured on camera, became a racial reckoning for this country and the world, with a wave of protest starting here and becoming a global movement. His aunt and cousin were in Minneapolis for this weekend's events, remembering him not just as a family member, but someone whose death has left a legacy.
You may want to fight harder, just fight harder for the lost and for all the others. And it's just a feeling you cannot explain when the whole world just stood up and showed you that this is not going to happen like this or end like this, and nothing is not going to be justified.
It was like a reawakening, because racism has always been there well over 400 years. So it was like a catalyst.
They still see police officer Derek Chauvin being convicted of Floyd's murder as a landmark moment.
They were held accountable. So I think that from here on out, at least officers know that they're not going to slide through the cracks. You know, our voices are heard more.
The scene of George Floyd's murder has been turned into what this community described as a sacred site. But there's always been a bigger political picture. People feel those in power are rolling back the change that should have started here. Just this week, the US Department of Justice dismissed investigations into several major police departments, including in Minneapolis.
This is another sacred space that's considered an extension of George Floyd Square, which is just steps away from here.
Dikema Levy is an activist who took to the streets 5 years ago. Her thoughts on the rolling back of police reforms go right to the heart of a wider distrust.
The fact that they would choose to make the announcement during the very week that we are commemorating the 5-year anniversary since George Floyd was murdered is particularly cruel. But that type of cruelty is what we have seen since Donald Trump took office on January 20th of this year. From my perspective, that is white supremacy on steroids. And it should come as no surprise that he would take these types of steps because these are the things that he talked about on the campaign trail.
Donald Trump says his policing policies will make communities safer. But in moments like this, there are always deeper questions to ask about this country and whether the racial divisions that exist here can ever be healed. Shingi Marike, Sky News, Minneapolis.
Prince William's vision for the monarchy is increasingly being driven by a desire to shift the dial on global leadership where others may be failing. This comes in a week when the Prince and Princess of Wales were praised in Time magazine's top 100 philanthropists list for modernising royal philanthropy, they said. Our royal correspondent Brown Mills has more.
They're pictures that shine a light on a future king, yet feel like a massive contrast to the image Prince William wants to show, especially in a week when William and Kate have made it into Time magazine praised for modernising royal philanthropy. Partly, it seems, spurred on by a desire to shift the dial on what global leadership really looks like. Over the past 20 years, Tessie Ojo from the Diana Award says he's always had that compulsion to do things differently.
What people 40 years ago wanted from their monarch was completely different. I think it's really super important that, as the heir, as the next monarch, is very in tune with what the people want and what the people expect, and being able to be that monarch, be that 21st century monarch who is a present dad, but also a leader who understands how to use your leadership for social good.
Impact is the word you'll hear ahead of any of his engagements. This trip to Leith in Edinburgh, launching the latest social impact project for his Royal Foundation. David Duke from Street Soccer used to be homeless and has connected with the Prince through their work.
Would everyone do the same as he does? I always ask that question, and for me, I just think, he's got a voice that can travel further than ours can, and the fact that he wants to give up his time to support a cause like ours and like others across the UK, then I'm all in.
As heir to the throne, there were lots of different titles that he had to take on, but one that he seems to be shaping for himself is as a quiet disruptor, albeit still within that very traditional institution. And while he is trying to do things a bit more subtly than other members of the family, it is at times still setting him up for criticism.
I'm sorry, sir. That's Her Royal Highness is the winner of the High Champion.
As a couple putting family first, it means engagements like this now fit around things like the school run and school holidays. On paper, that means fewer visits, and some even using the word work shy. But their family focus appears to be something that people admire.
If you follow the royal family, maybe that would be like a natural progression to sort of look up to them if they're putting their family first. Maybe that's a good thing.
Just do things with his family and his wife that gave to have. Why should we do things as the whole monarchy used to do? We should just be doing its own thing.
They're having to behave in a certain way because obviously that's how royalty is. But they're trying to show that they do live like us, really.
It does make you wonder what's going to happen to more traditional aspects of royal life when he does lead the firm full time. His views on how things should change will be much more consequential than those in the family who've tried to be more noisily disruptive. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Next, the British-born newspaper owner whose takeover of the Daily Telegraph appears to have been thwarted is calling on the title stakeholders to rally behind his bid. The Telegraph at the moment is said to be sold to US private equity firm Redbird Capital for £500 million, but David Efune, publisher of the New York Sun, says he has backing from the former Chancellor Nadim Zahawi and describes his offer for the Telegraph as the British bid. David joins me now from New York. What makes it British then?
Lovely to be with you, and I think the key word that you said there was appear, and I am here to tell you and all of your viewers that the British bid for the Telegraph is alive and well and not going anywhere. In fact, our resolve has only been strengthened following the announcement on Friday, and that is a pledge to the British people, to the good men and women at the Telegraph. We will fight for you till the very end.
Will you fight from New York or from London?
I will fight from London.
But you're based in New York, so I'll come back to my first question, David. What makes your bid British?
Look, I am British myself. I was born and raised in England. My family is in England. Obviously, I've spent some time over here learning the craft of journalism in a city where journalism is practiced widely. Certainly, our own backers and all of our financing is coming from British citizens. So every single corner of this, from the leadership to the financing, all the way downwards, is entirely British.
Does it ultimately matter when it seems that Redbird Capital are in the prime position now to own it?
Well, look, what's been announced is an agreement in principle. The Telegraph itself reported that nothing had been signed or committed. And if the history of the Telegraph's ownership saga teaches us anything, it's that the ownership of the Telegraph, and frankly, any other crown jewel of British public life, will not be determined by means of a press release. The British public yet will have their say via their elected representatives. The Telegraph staff and the Telegraph readers will have their say, and as will the rest of the British press. I mean, the truth is that if you look not even that closely, you'll see that this Redbird bid and the announcement raises far more questions than it answers. And I'm not here to ask those questions. Those are for others to take the lead on. But I am here to present a clear and better alternative on a number of grounds.
If we look back at previous ownership of the Telegraph, the Barclay brothers weren't domiciled in the UK. They lived in the Channel Islands, a tax haven, and owned it from there. So ultimately, does it matter?
Look, I mean, there are three main reasons, I'd say, and there are more, but there are three main reasons why our bid is clearly a better alternative. The question of whether some form of foreign ownership will be allowed is not for me to determine. That's for Parliament and that's for the British people.
And let me just come in, because what the government has said is they don't want a majority ownership by the United Arab Emirates. That's why this has gone back to Redbird Capital as opposed to Redbird IMI, which is a previous consortium, if you like. That's the issue here.
Yeah, no, obviously I'm clear on that. And that is actually one of the key reasons why our bid is clearly better, the question of speed, which is, there are quite a lot of questions surrounding Redbird themselves, obviously. Where does their capital come from? I suspect that because of all of these questions that surround it, there will need to be a public interest intervention, likely an in-depth investigation, which means that the saga of the Telegraph could take another year to resolve.
But that could happen to you as well in your consortium. So be transparent now, David. Tell us exactly where your money's coming from. Do you have the 500 million that they're putting up?
Look, there are no such questions surrounding our bid. We've made public where our capital is coming from. Jeremy Hosking, Nadim Zahawi, obviously myself. There would be some debt in the mix. We're quite far. We have a significant bulk of the capital raised as it stands today, and we're very transparent about where it's coming from. It's not coming from funded, it's coming from individual people.
Just a final question, because we haven't got too much time. Why do you and others, like Jeremy Hosking, who has supported right-wing political parties previously, and of course Nadim Zahawi being a prominent Conservative, why do you in particular want to take ownership of the Telegraph? What are you going to do with it?
Look, I am a lifelong newsman. You know, I started my career as a journalist, as a columnist. Obviously, I've become a publisher. We care about the role of journalism